This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
In my remarks, but Dr. Chang did leave behind a wife and 2 children. He's a beloved member of his community, is known for his hard work and work ethic in sports medicine, and our thoughts and prayers go out to him, his friends, and the community for their loss, as well as the Geneva Presbyterian Church, Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church, which used that physical location for their services, the Laguna Woods community, and the Orange County community in general. What happened less than 24 hours ago is still unfolding. We're still going through evidence as we speak. We served numerous search warrants that have collected articles that we will be evaluating as time goes on. And so we're going to give you today as much information as we possibly can to connect the dots and tell you a story, the tragedy that occurred yesterday afternoon in Orange County. First, I want to start with the individual involved in this. This is an isolated incident. We do know that the individual, at least every information that we have to this date, shows that this individual was acting alone. And we do know that based on information we've collected, and I'm not going to go into the details of that evidence, was a politically motivated hate incident, a grievance that this individual had between himself and the Taiwanese community at large. Yesterday afternoon, members of the Taiwanese Presbyterian Church, who shared a space with Geneva Presbyterian Church since 2009, were having a lunch banquet following their church service. The banquet was celebrating the return of one of their pastors who had recently returned from a mission trip from Taiwan. There were approximately 50 people attending the banquet at that time. The individual involved in this heinous crime is David Cho, 68, of Las Vegas. He does have one family member living in the United States, but his wife and son are currently not residing in the United States. He lived in a residence by himself, or at least with other people, but he rented a room in that location and did not have other family members residing with him. It is believed that the suspect involved, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say his name again. The suspect involved drove to Orange County on Saturday, was in the area around the church we were investigating, and did come to church after their morning service. The suspect was not a regular attendee of that church, and there are no known ties or affiliations with that church other than his appearance there yesterday. During the lunch, the individual involved, the suspect, was able to secure the doors within the church with chains and tried to disable locks within the church with super glue. He started shooting inside the building, and 5 people were wounded by gunshots, and Mr. Chang, as I mentioned, lost his life. All the parishioners attending were Asian Americans, ranging in age from 66 years old to 92 years old. 2 of the victims are a married couple in their mid-80s. Dr. Chang, 52, of Laguna Niguel, took heroic actions that day. In fact, I want to pause and just tell you that Dr. Chang is a hero in this incident. Based on statements from the witnesses and corroborated by other means, it is known that Dr. Chang charged the individual, the suspect, attempted to disarm him, which allowed other parishioners to then intercede, taking the suspect into custody. Without the actions of Dr. Chang, it is no doubt that there will be numerous additional victims in this crime. Unfortunately, after Dr. Chang tackled the suspect, he was hit by gunshots and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. During the struggle, other parishioners got involved. A pastor threw a chair at the subject, and they were able to render him subdued and tied him for others before law enforcement was able to arrive on scene. Deputies arrived within minutes following the 911 call from inside the church. They forced entry into the church building and took the suspect safely into custody. 2 handguns were recovered at the scene. The special agent with the ATF will discuss those handguns specifically. After the suspect was detained, our deputies began life-saving measures, soon followed by response by the Orange County Fire Authority, who took over first aid and medical care. 5 victims were taken to local hospitals. I want to thank OCFA for their immediate response and their partnership we have with them in serving our community and providing care to the victims. Homicide investigators have worked tirelessly throughout the night to learn what we can share about the incident that occurred. I mentioned that numerous search warrants have been served, both on the individual, the residence in Las Vegas, and a vehicle that is registered to the subject that was located within the parking lot. We know that the subject involved is a U.S. citizen who immigrated from China. He has lived in the United States for many years, including other states, including Texas. He worked as a security guard in security jobs in the Las Vegas area. Is not believed to be associated with any specific church or any religion. And there's no direct connection to the church or any member of the church that we are aware of, but this investigation is still ongoing. During the day of the incident, yesterday, he drove to the church parking lot. On Sunday, his car has been searched and is still being processed by the Orange County Crime Lab, and evidence was collected linking him to this crime. Based on preliminary information in the investigation, it is believed the suspect involved was upset about political tensions between China and Taiwan. In addition to the evidence collected from the vehicle, and to show the intent of this specific suspect, during the course of his arranging his assault, we located several bags within the facility. They contained magazines with additional ammo, 4 Molotov cocktail-like incendiary devices that he had placed around the inside of the church. During the search warrant in Las Vegas, with the assistance of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, I want to thank that department as well for their assistance. Evidence was collected at that scene, including electronic devices, and we do have a cell phone that was left at the scene from him as well. We're still early in this investigation, and we're working collaboratively with our not only the Orange County District Attorney, Todd Spitzer, and his staff, but also with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, to corroborate on where this investigation leads next and any charges that will be brought forth against the suspect in these attacks. I do want to also say that incidents like this and that occurred have a heightened sense of awareness for our community. And when these things do happen, we have a heightened presence within our community to make sure those places of worship or any particular individuals targeted have an increased perception of their safety within the communities we serve. I want to thank also the deputies responding to this incident specifically. We train. It's unfortunate that we now live in an environment that we have to train for these types of incidents on a regular basis. And I can tell you that the members of my organization, Orange County Sheriff's Department, are trained at the highest level in emergency response and tactical readiness in the event that something like this were to occur. I want to thank the allied agencies who assisted us, specifically Chief John Lewis and the Newport Beach Police Department and his staff who provided translators, and also the Irvine Police Department Chief Mike Kent for his assistance in Irvine. I also want to thank specifically the City of Laguna Woods, Mayor Carol Moore and the Laguna Woods City Council for their awareness and concern for their community, but also their continued support of the Orange County Sheriff's Department as a contract partner providing law enforcement services to their community for many years. I also want to acknowledge several people behind me who are here who won't be speaking but have been tremendously supportive of our efforts, and that includes Supervisor Lisa Bartlett, who is the 5th District Supervisor, Congresswoman Katie Porter, who represents that area as well, and especially the federal partners whom we have a phenomenal relationship with here in Orange County. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, who you'll hear from shortly, the ATF, and other federal partners as well. And lastly, I really want to thank the members of the congregation who were there yesterday. Their actions following Dr. Chang's attack on the suspect, rendering him at least incapacitated momentarily, but their quick actions really brought to resolution and conclusion this incident that could have been much, much worse. And I want to really emphasize that the majority of the people in attendance were elderly, and they acted spontaneously, heroically, and if not for their quick action, the way that this individual set up that environment to kill many more people, there would have been many, many more lives lost, if not for the concerted effort of the members of that church. I'll be available to answer any questions after the other speakers, and I'd like to turn it over to the Orange County Fire Authority.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Contreras with the Orange County Fire Authority. I'm a division chief that oversees the city of Laguna Woods. And like everybody, you're going to hear from everybody, our heartfelt concern for the victims, as well as the people and the sheriffs that were all involved, goes out to all of them. Yesterday, OCFA responded as part of an active shooter incident that we work with and train with the Orange County sheriffs. Once the sheriff's department cleared the scene, and I want to say not only, like the sheriff said, they're our partners, but they cleared the scene very effectively and very efficiently, that allowed us to go in and treat the patients. From there, we declared a mass casualty incident. That allowed us to get the mass amount, as many resources on scene to treat the patients as quick as possible. Once we did that, we called for multiple ambulances as well as the sheriff's helicopter that was landed. That was all precautionary due to what we thought and eventually unfolded. The firefighter paramedics that were on scene treated a total of 6 patients. Of those 6 patients, 2 were treated at Mission Hospital and are currently in good condition. That's an upgrade from stable to good. 2 additional patients that were transported to OC Global are currently in stable, and the other patient, or the 5th patient, we were unable to get a status on, but was transported to UCI. And then, as the sheriff said, there was 1 DOA on the scene. Again, I would like to point out and thank our partners with the sheriffs that really allowed us to do our jobs and allowed us to treat the patients so that we could get them off scene in a very timely and efficient manner. Just a little background, the Orange County Fire Authority has also gone through our critical stress debriefing, and we've been able to do that with all of our personnel at this time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Christy Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Office. Like the sheriff and the chief mentioned, that we are all hurting today for the community, for the victims, and for specifically Dr. Chang's family. We are wanting to also recognize his heroic efforts in undoubtedly saving lives yesterday. We have been working around the clock with the Orange County Sheriff's Department since yesterday to determine what the motive has been in this case. We have provided offers of assistance with our evidence recovery team. We have provided linguists in the languages of Mandarin and Taiwanese, and we have also been involved in the investigation. We opened a federal hate crimes investigation today to determine further what type of federal charges can be brought. We'll be working very closely with the Orange County District Attorney's Office and the United States Attorney's Office to determine, on top of the state charges that you'll hear about shortly, what federal charges can also be brought. We do want to make sure that you know that we have discovered evidence that the individual was motivated by some type of hate. And we also want you to know that we will be working to get to the bottom of every piece of evidence that has been uncovered, which ranges from what was described by the sheriff, digital evidence, written evidence, and of course witness statements. We are here to work side by side in a very an amazing really partnership with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, the Orange County, of course, Fire Department, the Orange County District Attorney's Office, and the United States Attorney's Office. We have, once our full review and full translation of the evidence is complete, we will have more information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Galloway. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of ATF's Los Angeles Field Division. On behalf of ATF, I'd like to once again offer our condolences to the victims, families, and community that's been affected by this tragedy. In follow-up from yesterday's press conference, the urgent firearm traces have been completed, and those traces show that the suspect lawfully purchased the firearms in Las Vegas, Nevada. Both firearms were commercially made 9mm caliber semi-automatic pistols. One firearm was purchased by the suspect in 2015, while the other firearm was purchased by the suspect in 2017. Details of those traces have since been shared with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. ATF's goal is to provide urgent trace information to our law enforcement partners within hours. Trace information is an important piece of evidence as it reveals the origin or background of the firearm from the manufacturer to the purchaser. This ultimately gives us leads as to whether the shooter worked alone or if others were involved. In this investigation, again, the trace of the firearms revealed that the suspect was the original purchaser of those firearms. With regards to the recovery of the additional ammunition and Molotov cocktails, ATF is providing assistance in the identification of the ammunition and stands ready to provide our expertise in the identification of the devices. As this investigation continues, ATF will work directly with our partners, the Orange County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, and we will continue to provide our expertise and assistance throughout it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Todd Spitzer. I'm the Orange County elected district attorney. I want to describe to you what I saw last night at that church. Jennifer Walker, who is a deputy district attorney who will be prosecuting this case, and I walked through the crime scene. And let me tell you what that social hall looked like. It's a large room with a big stage and a big black curtain. And it had about 10 tables set up with tablecloths. There were red Solo cups on the table. And you could tell that havoc had been created in that space. There was turned over containers of popcorn. A person left their walker, their cane, on the table because it was obvious from the scene that they had to get out of there as quickly as possible in an utmost panic. Lined on the walls in that social hall are New Testament phrases. Phrases about how we should treat our neighbors, how should we treat each other, how we should love. And I will tell you that evil was in that church yesterday. But I will tell you that that church, the congregants, and obviously the decedent, Dr. Cheng, and the others who were shot, and all the other congregants, engaged in the most heroic activity one could ever imagine. But one of the youngest congregants there yesterday, Dr. Cheng, understanding that there was elderly everywhere and they couldn't get out of the premises because the doors had been chained. After others had been shot, he took it upon himself to charge across the room and to do everything he could to disable the assailant. He was shot. And then there was an attempt to shoot him again, but the gun jammed. And he succumbed to his injuries. He sacrificed himself so that others could live. That irony in a church is not lost on me. The Orange County District Attorney's Office is examining all the evidence, and as the sheriff indicated, and the FBI and ATF, we have a lot of additional information to go through. But at this time, these are the charges we are contemplating filing in the morning for the arraignment of the suspect. We have 1 count of murder with the use of a gun. We are adding special circumstances to that charge of lying in wait. I told you there was a black curtain in this auditorium social hall. Behind that black curtain was secreted the explosives, additional weaponry, magazines, and other tools that the suspect was planning on utilizing later on after he socialized and mingled amongst the congregants to carry out his crimes. We are adding 5 counts of attempted murder against each of the individuals who suffered gunshot wounds, as well as 4 counts of explosives, unlawful possession of explosives. The suspect is eligible for life without the possibility of parole or death. The reason I was there is because at some point in time down the road, I will have to determine as a district attorney whether or not we will be seeking death. I wanted to see the crime scene. I needed to see where Dr. Cheng fell. I needed to see with my own eyes the havoc, the despair, the urgency, the emotion, and the lives that he has forever affected and ruined. I needed to see that for myself as the one who will decide whether we pursue or seek death. With respect to hate crimes, there's a lot of evidence that absolutely at this point in time indicates that the suspect had an absolute bias against the Taiwanese people, its country, as a Chinese or mainland national. However, we need to let this investigation play itself out, and we need to get all the evidence so that if we do add a hate crime enhancement, it will be done because we can prove that enhancement beyond a reasonable doubt. The enhancement of hate does not add any additional time to the life without possibility of parole or the death consideration. However, we have been, everybody behind me here and all the elected officials, we have made it unequivocally clear we will not tolerate hate in this county. We will prosecute hate to the fullest extent of the law. We will charge it when we can prove it, and we will use it as an example to keep haters from hating across this country and around Orange County. The heroism of those individuals in that room is unbelievable to all of us in law enforcement. That these civilians took it upon them their own to take him into, to detain him, to stop his movements, one person sacrificing his lives. It is literally inspiring and unbelievable. When you were in that room last night where Dr. Cheng lost his life, you could feel it, you could see the chaos. It was permeable. It was life-changing. It was overwhelming. And now it's our job as members of law enforcement to continue this investigation, to conclude it, and to prosecute this individual to the fullest extent of the law while always supporting the victims. Thank you.
We're going to take questions at this time, right here in front.
Can you just talk a little bit more about the evidence? Was there some sort of manifesto or social media posts, and were they English and Chinese?
The evidence, so the question was, what type of evidence did we have specifically? We can tell you that within the vehicle he left not a manifesto but some notes that supported what I shared with you earlier, and that would be his really hatred of the Taiwanese people. There are other pieces of evidence that have been collected, both digital and physical, that we'll be evaluating as well, but that has not quite happened yet, including a cellular phone that was associated with him that was collected at the scene. We have the mechanisms or the means within both the Sheriff's Department and my partners at the FBI to do electronic evidence of both either thumb drives, computers, and cellular phones to make sure we get those and get those open and appropriately investigated. And those are all been collected regarding search warrants.
So you haven't been able to go through that yet?
We haven't gone through all those yet. That's in the process of being done. It has to be done methodically to make sure we maintain the evidence that's on there and not damage it. So there's procedurally ways that happens, and that will take some time. The language, I believe, was Mandarin.
Sure. I have three questions. The first is, do you know why he targeted this church in particular? Second question is his wife Taiwanese, and is she now living in Taiwan? And do you know if his hatred of Taiwan is long-standing, or is it more recent and related to his wife? And the third question is, from your interviews of the people who were there, did the suspect say anything to them?
So that's a lot of questions. I'm going to try to get them in order. So your first question, just summarize it real quick so I can tell everybody else what that was.
Why did he target them?
So we're still trying to determine why he targeted the specific church. We can tell you that from a national framework, the Taiwanese Presbyterian is not a large congregant location. And this, if you look at proximity to Vegas, this may have just been the closest in proximity based on the target of his hatred of that particular group. His wife is currently not residing in the United States. She is in Taiwan. And your next question was?
I was asking, is his hatred of Taiwan long-standing or related to issues?
I believe his hatred of Taiwan manifested when he was residing there in previous years, possibly in his youth. He was not well received while living there, according to what we believe we've collected so far, and that's manifested into this hatred. And it's combined with the political environment of his hatred of the Taiwanese people between the China and Taiwan tensions that are currently occurring. Did I answer your questions?
The last one was, did the suspect say anything to people?
That's part of the ongoing investigation, so we're not going to cover what any statements that he made, if any. The question was, how long has he lived in the United States, and is he a U.S. citizen? He has lived here for many years, and he is a U.S. citizen. Yes, Michelle. So the question was, what was going on with him on Saturday? We know that he resided in Las Vegas. We believe, based on some of the evidence we collected, he traveled from Las Vegas to the Orange County area on Saturday. We're still determining if he was within the area, what he did while he was here, but we know between the time that he traveled here and the time of yesterday afternoon when the incident took place, we're trying to connect all those dots. So we're looking for other evidence in the area that might have tied him to that location or what he might have been doing. Yes, Michelle?
The beat-up silver car, is that the car you're referring to that's in the parking lot?
There was a vehicle in the parking lot. I don't know the description, but there's one vehicle in the parking lot that was associated with him. He is a registered owner, and that's been collected. It's been taken to our crime lab. It's being processed via search warrant for evidence. Yes, right over here.
On the Google Maps, it shows like everything out there has a facility in the back, which is a social hall. It's a big structure. It has a larger portion and a smaller portion. The first question is it the larger portion that's the social hall, and how many exits, how many were glued, and how many were chained?
I don't know the physical building, which one of the two, because I don't know what map you're looking at. I know that there is a social hall and a church. I can tell you that multiple locations had been chained shut, and multiple entrances that we had been tampered with or trying to prevent entry because of super glue that were added to the locks, and at least one door he had attempted to nail shut as well. So the question was an estimate as to how long he was on scene. We know that he was there during the festivities, if you will. He was inside. One person asked what his purpose was, if he needed help. So he was inside and moving about during that time, and then at one point he obviously started his rampage, which is one of the most horrific hate crimes I've seen. Yes.
How premeditated and methodical was this shooting?
Well, if you look at the similarities between, and I'll defer actually to Assistant Director with the FBI in a moment, but if you look at what he took, we know that he was very intentional in his plan. We know that he formulated a strategy that he wanted to employ. It was very well thought out from how he had prepared both being there, securing the location, placing things about the inside of the room to perpetuate additional victims if he had the opportunity. So that is methodical. We know that took place at least 24 hours in advance between his travel to Orange County from outside the area. The evidence we've collected will show further how much more in detail he went in planning this attack and how far back that was. We do have a lot of evidence to go through, and that will be coming through through the next minimally days, probably months. Yes, sir.
How was he behaving in the church notice before the shooting? What would be a time?
So the question was, what was his behavior like within the church? He was obviously not known to them because several people had asked about him being there, but it wasn't so much that he didn't blend in because nobody made a phone call or requested assistance before his actions of the shooting occurred.
Sheriff, when it comes to Mr. Chang, was he there with his family, his kids, were they present at the time of the shooting, or was he there by himself?
So the question was Mr. Chang there alone? I don't know the list of all the people present. I apologize for that. I don't think his children were there based on the ages of people who were present beyond Dr. Chang. Again, the heroic actions of Dr. Chang, literally the meeting of good versus evil between Dr. Chang and the suspect in this case.
And you hear the term fight or flight. In this case, you had people trying to flee and you had people fighting. What do you recommend people do in a situation like this if they find themselves in an unfortunate situation just like this one?
So the question was, what recommendations do we have to people in this type of circumstance? First, you hope never to be in this circumstance. I think this was a nightmare that the dozens of people in attendance are going to have to relive. We had numerous resources on scene post-incident, including our peer support for our personnel. We had members of our chaplain program from the Sheriff's Department. They were there as well, and contracted psychologists and psychiatrists to come in to help people deal with the trauma that they would be dealing with. First and foremost, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, our local fusion center, has training specific to places of worship. We have trained many people on how to respond during incidents of crisis in a church facility. We also have a program that's taught. It's been nationally recognized for places of worship and attendees on how to address threats in a church environment. And the incident you talked about, the fight or flight or run, hide, fight, any of those are good. But I think, and this is unfortunate that we live in this environment today, that we have to think, really, what would I do? And I would challenge everybody, because of the environment that we live in today, if what confronted with an incident, what would you do? How would you respond? How would you react? In Dr. Chang's incident, I don't think that was a spontaneous act. I think he had thought through in his mind, if something were to happen, what would I do? And he acted on it, and he saved the lives of probably upwards of dozens of people by the way this individual was prepared. Yes, sir.
Do you have any information that the suspect posted anything on social media sites?
So the question was, do we have any information about posting or sharing of information on social media sites? We do not. We have numerous pieces of electronic and digital information that we will be accessing lawfully through search warrant to see what, if any, of that information would affiliate him with a planned act, and that will be turned over to both the Orange County District Attorney's Office and the FBI for consideration of additional charges. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know, was he present at the service before and did he have lunch with congregants?
So the question was he present at the service before, and did he have lunch with the congregants? Not sure if he was present at the service before. We do know that he was with the individuals in the banquet hall and was acting, I would say, perceivably as normal as possible while he was in attendance, but not really known to the individuals there, and several people had addressed him being there, but not so much that they saw him at that time as a risk or a threat.
You don't know if he actually ate a meal.
I do not know if he shared a meal with those individuals or not. Yes. So the order is still being evaluated. I can only speculate as to the order as being one of the latter subjects who was encountered and subject to gunfire because of the way this incident unfolded and the way it ended. It wouldn't have made sense that he would have been one of the first because he was able to address the individual, the shooter, and at least demobilize him in a way that he was unable to effectuate additional gunfire after his encounter with Dr. Chang. He had a guard license from Nevada.
Would that allow him to carry a weapon with a license?
No, not in the state of California.
But in Nevada?
In Nevada, it would be what he would be required to carry a gun in that capacity as a security guard.
Do you have any idea where he was working in the security?
No, I do not.
Were there any reports of Molotov cocktails when law enforcement arrived, or was that something that law enforcement just showed up?
So the question was about the Molotov cocktail-like devices. Those were within one of the bags that have been placed within the facility. Once we rendered the facility safe, we freeze the location, making it static, treating the wounded, obviously, to get them medical help, and then we, for want of a better term, freeze the location so that we can then methodically label all the evidence, collect it as necessary. And those were cleared by our hazardous devices squad with the Sheriff's Department before they were moved to make sure they could be rendered safe.
They were all located behind the hood? Molotov cocktails, all the bags, all that?
They were within the room. I'm not going to get specific to locations.
Does the suspect have any criminal history or history of violence?
I think that we're not going to get into that at this time. That's part of the investigation. We're still working towards that information. Sorry?
He said anything while in custody?
He said some brief comments when we took him into custody, and then he asked for an attorney.
Sheriff, how many people, attendees were at the banquet?
I believe there were approximately 40 in attendance, maybe as many as 50.
Get in, Sheriff, if it barricaded, locked, chained the doors? Did they have to use any special methods?
They were able to find a door that was able to breach and find their way in. It was a swing door, I believe, and all our deputies have tools necessary to breach if they can, but they're able to breach into the facility. All the other entrances and exits within there had been secured by the subject prior to our arrival. Yes?
I was asked about the suspect's wife, and is she Taiwanese?
I do not know her nationality. I do know that she's not in the country, and she is in Taiwan presently. I don't know her nationality.
A question about the doors being breached, because we spoke with somebody earlier who said he got out of a kitchen door, some came out of a side door. Were those doors also breached, or were they actually?
There was one source of entrance. When you get into tactical operations, you want to be very methodical, and what you don't want to have is multiple points of entry by law enforcement because it creates a safety issue. So once there is a source of entry into that facility, which we train to, then we very methodically enter into that to eliminate, wherever possible, the likelihood that we might have law enforcement and law enforcement circumstances. And that's done very methodically. You train to the highest standards and highest levels in how to do that safely. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, you have to speak a little louder. He placed, so the question was the Molotov cocktails. He placed all those, when he came to the banquet hall, there were two bags. One of the bags had the Molotov cocktails. One of the other bags had additional magazines with ammunition. That's when he placed those two bags there very methodically while he was also securing the facility from the inside.
So, Sheriff, could this mean that the law enforcement agents had problems to get access to the banquet area at the beginning?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The law enforcement officers have problems trying to get inside this area where the shooting was
No,
happening?
there was. We were able to find an entrance. They made entry almost immediately, and we were able to take the suspect into custody and then render it safe, at which point we have significant partners with our Orange County Fire Authority. We train specifically on this. Once we know that the location has been rendered safe, the Fire Authority, working with us as tactical medics, will come in and render first aid to the individuals.
You know, these Molotov cocktails, they were strong enough to set on fire
We do not. So the question was, will the Molotov cocktail strong enough to be set on fire? Those have been rendered safe. They'll be evaluated by the ATF, and they'll determine the lethality of those devices and if they can be used for any additional crimes. So the question was, do we think his intent was to burn down the church? We do not know that. We know he had those incendiary devices on scene. There may be information we gleaned from some of the evidence that we have, the electronic evidence, and maybe some of the written evidence that we have as we start to unfold all of this very methodically. And once we get that, that will be brought forth and used with the intent by the subject by following consideration.
The shooting victims, do they live in Laguna Woods? Do they live in Orange County? Where are they from?
The shooting victims, I believe, did we put that up previously?
No, we'll get that information.
So we have not put that out previously, and we're not going to give their identities, obviously, but I believe they're all local residents, but we can get that information of the city in which they reside.
Sheriff, I have a question. Do you know if he targeted a Christian church? Was he targeting Christians specifically?
I think he was targeting based on the nationality of the individuals involved. So the question was, did he target a Christian church or a specific church? We know that he targeted, or we believe, based on what we've discovered so far, that he specifically targeted the Taiwanese community. And this is one representation of that Taiwanese community, the Taiwanese Presbyterian Church. Thank you. So the question was, did he visit the church previously? And we are working through the evidence to determine that. We have a lot of electronic evidence to go through, and we'll obviously put together a timeline that will show how he acted, the thoughts, the planning that he put in to this incident specifically, and that will be presented over to the District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's the last question. I do just want to end with one last statement. There's just no place for hate in this country anymore. I can't say it any more general to that. Whether it's racially based hate, whether it's religiously based hate, whether it's based on a national origin, sexual preference, there's just no place for hate anymore. And I think that this is a manifestation of the ugliest part of our humanity that exists within our country today. And at some point, we have to put aside our differences and focus on our similarities and realize we all want the same things. We want to be safe in our community. We want to be able to practice our religious beliefs. We want to be able to assimilate with our neighbors. And there's no greater representation of the different representatives of all these groups than in Orange County. We have tremendously diverse religious backgrounds. And I have an interfaith council that works with all of these faith traditions to make sure when these things happen, whether it be in Poway, that was focused on a religion, whether it was in Buffalo, focused on a race, whether it's focused on nationality. At least in this county, when these things happen, we stand up united, shoulder to shoulder, lifting each other up, and with one unified voice. There's no place for hate in this county, and we are not going to tolerate it. And we have tremendous efforts that we have put in place over the last several years to help prepare us in the event that there has to be a tactical response to something like this, but most importantly, to send a message that in this county, myself and the many people standing behind me has no tolerance for, and there's no place for hate within the Orange County community. Thank you for being here today.
So we want to thank everyone for coming. We're going to conclude the press conference. We will be providing the booking photo of the suspect electronically to members of the media. And if there are any follow-up questions or anything additional that you need, our Sheriff's Public Information staff will be right over here on the side. Thank you all for coming.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.